On a cold New York afternoon, a billionaire notices a small girl selling oranges with a sign that reads, "Help my mom get surgery." One glance at the photo in her hands freezes his heart. 7 years ago, he walked away. Today, fate brings him back. The sky over New York was the color of cold steel. Rhett Callahan pulled the collar of his wool coat higher as he stepped onto the Lower East Side sidewalk, the sound of traffic humming like a distant tide. He had walked these streets many times before, by choice, not chance. No driver, no security, just his thoughts and the city as it truly was. That was when he saw the color. A small table near the edge of a community market stood out against the gray afternoon. Oranges, bright, almost glowing, were stacked in careful rows. Behind them stood a little girl, no older than 7, bundled in a soft knit jacket a size too big. Her dark curls escaped from a knitted cap, framing a face far too serious for someone her age. A handmade sign rested against the crate. "Help my mom get her surgery." The letters were uneven, written with a child's careful concentration. Rhett slowed without realizing it. The girl noticed him watching. She straightened immediately, as if remembering her manners. "Hi, sir," she said politely. Her voice was small but steady. "Would you like an orange? They're very sweet." Something tightened in Rhett's chest. He stepped closer, kneeling so he wouldn't tower over her. "That's a very nice sign," he said gently. "Did you make it yourself?" She nodded. "Yes. My name's Junie. My mom says people listen more when you're honest." Rhett glanced around. A community volunteer stood a few steps away, chatting with another vendor, keeping a discreet eye on the table. "Why does your mom need surgery?" he asked softly. Junie hesitated. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "She's very sick," she whispered, "but she still smiles. I want to help." The wind picked up, fluttering the sign. Rhett Callahan. A man who had signed billion-dollar deals without blinking felt something quietly break open inside his chest. Rhett hadn't planned on stopping that day. 3 years ago, after the last boardroom victory that felt strangely hollow, he had started this ritual. Once a month, he dismissed his driver and walked. No destination, no entourage, just the city and its unpolished truth. His advisors called it eccentric. Rhett called it necessary. He rose slowly from his crouch, brushing imaginary dust from his trousers. "How much for the oranges?" he asked. "3 for $5, Junie replied instantly. Then, eager to be helpful, she added, "If you buy more, I can make it cheaper." Rhett smiled, a real one this time. "How many do you have?" Junie looked down, counting carefully under her breath, touching each orange with a small finger. 32. "I'll take them all," Rhett said. Her head snapped up. "All of them." "All," he confirmed. Suspicion flickered across her face, not fear, just careful curiosity. That's a lot." Rhett pulled out cash, handing it to her gently. "You can keep selling them," he said. "I don't need to take them with me." Junie frowned, thinking hard. "But you paid." Sometimes, he replied, people just want to help. Her face softened. She accepted the money, carefully tucking it deep into her jacket pocket. "This will help my mom," she said earnestly. "Thank you." Rhett noticed then how small her hands were, how she stood a little too straight, as if carrying a responsibility far heavier than oranges. "Do you go to school?" he asked. "Yes," Junie said, "after things get better." "And ice cream?" he asked lightly. Her eyes lit up, then dimmed. "Only on special days. It's kind of expensive." Rhett looked away for a moment. His wealth had bought many things, but not this moment. Not this quiet ache. Junie hesitated, then reached into her pocket. "I have a picture," she said, "of my mom. She was really pretty before she got sick." Rhett nodded politely, unprepared for anything more than courtesy. She unfolded a worn photograph and held it up with both hands. The world stopped. Rhett's breath caught in his throat as if the air itself had vanished. The sounds of the city blurred into nothing. His heart missed a beat, then another. The woman in the photo smiled softly at the camera. Wavy brown hair, gentle lines at the eyes, and those unmistakable green eyes. Maris Caldwell, the woman he had loved. The woman who had vanished from his life 7 years ago without a word. "This is my mom," Junie said proudly. "She used to laugh a lot." Rhett forced himself to breathe. "Junie," he said carefully, his voice barely steady. "How old are you?" She beamed. 7. "I just had my birthday." 7. The number echoed like a bell in his mind, loud and unforgiving. "Do you live nearby?" he asked, every muscle tense. "Yes. On Orchard Street," she said, pointing down the block. "The red building." Rhett handed the photo back with shaking fingers. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said gently. "I'm not," Junie replied. "Mrs. Reyes watches me, and I'm very careful." She smiled again, trusting open undeserved. As Junie packed her things, Rhett stood frozen, staring at the cracked sidewalk beneath his feet. If the math was right, if fate was truly this cruel, then the little girl selling oranges in the cold might be the answer to the greatest mistake of his life. Rhett walked beside Junie, but his mind lagged several steps behind. 7. The number kept repeating, steady and merciless, like a clock that refused to stop ticking. 7 years since Maris had disappeared. 7 years since the last unanswered message. 7 years since he had convinced himself that silence meant closure. Junie swung her cloth bag gently as they walked. Inside, the oranges knocked softly against each other, a cheerful sound that felt painfully out of place. "My mom says numbers are important," Junie said, suddenly breaking the silence. "She says if you ignore them, they come back louder." Rhett swallowed. "That's very wise," he replied. They reached the corner of Orchard Street. The buildings narrowed, the sunlight fading between brick walls. Junie pointed ahead. "That one," she said. "The red building." Rhett nodded, forcing his face to remain calm. "You did a great job today," he told her. "Helping your mom." Junie shrugged, a child's attempt at bravery. "She'd do it for me." The words landed heavier than she could possibly know. Junie, Rhett said carefully, stopping at the corner. "Can I ask you something?" She looked up at him, eyes clear and curious. "Okay. Does your dad help your mom?" Junie frowned, not sad, just thoughtful. "I don't think so. I don't really have a dad." The sentence was simple, clean, honest. "My mom never talks about him," Junie continued. "Sometimes I imagine he's far away. Or maybe he just didn't know about us." Rhett's chest tightened painfully. "Do you think he was bad?" she asked. "No," Rhett said immediately. Too quickly, he softened his voice. "I think sometimes people make mistakes. Big ones. And they don't realize how much they hurt others until it's too late." Junie nodded, accepting this explanation, with a maturity that startled him. "Well," she said, offering a small smile. If he didn't know, maybe he'd want to help now. Rhett watched her turn toward the building. For the first time in years, hope and fear collided inside him with equal force. Junie stopped at the entrance, exactly as promised. "You can wait here," she said politely. "This is my street." Rhett nodded. "I'll stay until you're inside." She smiled, waved, and disappeared through the partially broken door. Rhett didn't move. The building was older than regret, peeling paint, rusted railings, windows patched with tape. This was not a place where illness should be fought alone. He crossed the street slowly and positioned himself where he could see the windows without being obvious. 3rd floor. Junie had said 3rd floor. He counted, heart pounding louder with every step of his gaze. 1, 2, 3. A window flickered with light. Moments later, Junie appeared behind the glass. She placed the money carefully on the sill, then turned toward the interior of the apartment. Rhett closed his eyes. Maris was there. Sick. Struggling. And he had been living in a penthouse that echoed with nothing but his own thoughts. An hour passed. Junie returned to the window with a glass of water, then again later just staring outside, waiting for someone. Rhett stepped back suddenly, unable to breathe. He walked away quickly, almost running, as if distance could undo what he now knew. But it was too late. The truth had already taken root. That night, Rhett stood alone in his penthouse, the city glittering below like a taunt. He poured a drink, didn't touch it. On his desk lay a small velvet box. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, the ring still caught the light beautifully. "You should have tried harder," he murmured to the empty room. Maris had needed him. Junie had needed him. And he had been chasing market's numbers applause from people who would never love him back. He closed the box gently. Tomorrow, he decided. Not another month. Not another excuse. Tomorrow he would go back. Not as a billionaire, not as a savior, but as a man who would finally face the consequences of his absence. Rhett changed his clothes, jeans, a plain sweater, nothing intimidating. He made a list simple and practical. Food, warm clothes, medicine if needed, and above all, restraint. He would not demand answers. He would not reveal suspicions. He would not confuse a child's world. He would help. Quietly, legally, kindly. As he turned off the lights, one thought followed him into the dark: if Junie was his daughter. Then he had already failed her once. He would not fail her again. The next morning, Rhett Callahan did not wear a suit. No tailored jacket, no polished shoes, just dark jeans, a simple sweater, and a quiet determination he hadn't felt in years. He stopped at a grocery store on the way, nothing extravagant, just what mattered. Warm bread, soup, fruit, milk, a small box of cereal with a cartoon animal on the front. He didn't know why he chose that one. He just imagined Junie smiling. The red building looked even harsher in daylight. Rhett climbed the stairs slowly, bags cutting into his palms. By the third floor, his breathing had nothing to do with the weight. He stopped in front of the door with the faded animal stickers near the bottom. He knocked. Silence. Then soft footsteps. A chain slid slightly. "Who is it?" Junie's voice asked, cautious but familiar. "It's Rhett," he said gently. "From yesterday. I brought some things for you and your mom." A pause. Then the door opened a crack. Junie's eyes widened. "You came back. I said I would." Before she could say more, another figure stepped into view, Maris Caldwell. She looked thinner than he remembered. Pale, tired, but unmistakably herself. Her green eyes locked onto his and hardened instantly. "What are you doing here?" she asked flatly. Rhett lifted the bag slightly. "I brought groceries." Her jaw tightened. "That wasn't my question." Junie looked between them, sensing the shift. "Mom, this is the man who bought all the oranges," she said quickly. "He was very kind." Maris placed a protective hand on Junie's shoulder. "Go to your room, sweetheart," she said softly. "Please." Junie hesitated, but now Maris repeated gently but firmly. Junie obeyed, glancing back once before disappearing down the narrow hallway. The door closed. Maris crossed her arms. 7 years, she said quietly. "And now you show up at my door." Rhett met her gaze, his voice steady but raw. "I didn't know. And I won't insult you by pretending that fixes anything. I just want to help." Maris let out a short, humorless laugh. "Help," she repeated. "That's convenient." The air between them felt tight enough to snap. Maris did not invite him inside. She stood in the doorway like a wall Rhett had no right to cross. "You don't get to walk back into my life with grocery bags and a concerned look," she said, her voice low but controlled. "You disappeared." "I left for work," Rhett replied carefully. "I thought we needed space." When I came back, you never came back. Maris interrupted. You sent one email, one, then nothing. Rhett felt the words land like stones. I didn't know you were sick, he said. I didn't know about June. Maris's eyes flashed. Don't say her name like you know her. Rhett stopped, nodded once. You're right. A cough broke the tension. Maris turned away, briefly pressing a hand to her mouth. Rhett took a step forward instinctively, then stopped himself. I'm fine, she said sharply, noticing. I don't need saving. I'm not here to save you, he said. I'm here because a little girl shouldn't have to carry this alone. That gave her pause. You saw her, Maris said quietly, standing there pretending she's braver than she feels? Yes, Rhett admitted, and she's extraordinary. Maris looked down the hallway toward Junie's room. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but no less guarded. She doesn't know who you are, and she doesn't need confusion. I won't confuse her, Rhett said immediately. I won't make promises. I won't cross boundaries. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Maris stepped aside just enough to let him place the bags inside. You can leave the food, she said. Then you should go. Rhett set the bags down carefully. Thank you, he said, not for letting him in, but for protecting Junie so fiercely. As he turned to leave, Junie's door cracked open. Mr. Rhett, she whispered. Maris stiffened but didn't stop her. Yes, Rhett replied. Junie stepped forward, holding her teddy bear. Thank you for coming back. Rhett swallowed hard. You're welcome, Junie. That night, neither adult slept. Rhett was halfway down the stairs when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in the quiet morning, a child crying, not loud, not dramatic, just frightened. He turned and ran. The apartment door was open now. Junie stood in the hallway clutching her teddy bear, tears streaking her cheeks. Mr. Rhett, she said, her voice shaking. My mom won't wake up. Rhett moved instantly. Maris lay on the couch, pale, her breathing shallow but present. Rhett knelt beside her, steadying himself, keeping his voice calm. Junie, he said gently, I need you to do something very important. She nodded immediately, desperate to help. I need you to stay right here with me, he continued. You're doing exactly the right thing. He took out his phone and called for emergency medical help, speaking clearly, precisely. No panic, no raised voice. Help was on the way. Junie crouched beside him, her small hand gripping his sleeve. She said she was just tired, Junie whispered. I made her tea. You did perfectly, Rhett assured her. You took care of her. Soon professionals arrived, calm, efficient, reassuring. Maris was placed on a stretcher, monitored carefully. Junie looked up at Rhett, eyes wide. Is my mom going to be okay? Rhett knelt in front of her, meeting her gaze. We're taking her to people whose job is to help, he said honestly. And I'm staying with you. She nodded, trusting him without hesitation. As they followed the stretcher out into the morning light, Rhett felt the full weight of the truth settle on him. This was no longer about guilt, or money, or the past. It was about a child who needed stability, and a woman who had been strong for far too long. And for the first time in his life, Rhett Callahan did not run. The ambulance doors closed with a soft final sound. Rhett climbed in beside the stretcher, careful not to crowd the paramedics' work. Junie followed, gripping her teddy bear so tightly its ear bent between her fingers. The city rushed past the window's lights, streaking like nervous thoughts that refused to settle. Junie, Rhett said calmly, keeping his voice low and steady. You're doing great. Stay right here with me. She nodded, eyes fixed on her mother's face. She's breathing, Junie whispered, as if saying it out loud might keep it true. Yes, Rhett replied, and the doctors are ready for her. At the hospital entrance, a team was already waiting, efficient, composed, practiced. The stretcher rolled forward. Rhett stepped back only when asked, never letting Junie lose sight of him. Inside, the emergency department felt both fast and strangely quiet. The hum of machines, the murmur of voices, the gentle authority of professionals who knew exactly what to do. A woman in a white coat approached, her expression serious but reassuring. "I'm Dr. Elena Vargas," she said. "We're going to take very good care of your mom." Junie swallowed. "She needs surgery," she said earnestly. "I was saving." Dr. Vargas crouched slightly, bringing herself to Junie's eye level. "That was very brave of you," she said. "Right now, our job is to help her feel stronger. You helped us by bringing her here." Junie nodded, accepting this mission with solemn determination. Rhett answered questions as best he could, what he knew, what he didn't. No exaggeration, no assumptions, just honesty. As Maris was wheeled through the emergency doors, Junie's small hand found Rhett's sleeve again. "Can I stay?" she asked. "Yes," Rhett said without hesitation. "We'll stay together." The doors closed, and the waiting began. The waiting room clock moved too slowly. Rhett sat with Junie beside him, his jacket folded over her shoulders. Naomi Park arrived quietly, already coordinating with hospital staff, her presence a steady anchor. Junie didn't cry. She just stared at the doors. "My mom says hospitals smell like soap and hope," she said suddenly. Rhett managed a small smile. "She's right." Minutes stretched into something heavier. Junie shifted her voice, barely audible. "Mr. Rhett, is this my fault?" The question hit him like a blow he hadn't braced for. "No," he said firmly, turning to face her fully. "This is not your fault. Not even a little. But I should have noticed sooner," she whispered. Rhett shook his head. "You noticed. You asked for help. That's exactly what you're supposed to do." She studied his face, searching for doubt. Finding none, she leaned back against the chair. A nurse approached with warm juice and a simple sandwich. Junie accepted it politely, taking small bites. "I'm not very hungry," she admitted. "That's okay," Rhett said. "You can save it." Finally, Dr. Vargas returned. "Your mom is stable," she said. "She has an infection that made things harder and a heart condition that needs careful treatment. She's in good hands." Junie exhaled a small, shaky breath she'd been holding too long. "Can I see her?" she asked. Soon the doctor replied. "For a little while." As the doctor walked away, Junie looked up at Rhett. "You stayed," she said, surprised. "You didn't leave." Rhett met her gaze. "I'm here." It wasn't a promise. It was a fact. Maris lay resting, surrounded by soft beeps and clean white sheets. Junie stood on tiptoe beside the bed, holding her mother's hand carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm. Rhett stayed a respectful step back, giving space, guarding the doorway without meaning to. "She's sleeping," Junie whispered. "She looks tired." "She's getting help," Dr. Vargas said gently. "That's a good thing." Junie nodded. "I told you she was strong." Rhett watched the small exchange, something unspoken settling inside him, admiration, gratitude, a quiet resolve. When they stepped back into the hallway, Junie looked up at him. "Where will we go now?" Rhett didn't rush the answer. "Somewhere safe. Close by. We'll figure it out together with your mom's doctors." Junie considered this. "Okay." Naomi spoke softly. "Everything is arranged, properly." Junie squeezed Rhett's hand. "Can Theodore stay with me?" Rhett smiled. "Always." As they walked down the corridor, Rhett glanced back once at Maris's room. The past pressed in heavy and unresolved, but for the first time it didn't paralyze him. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had changed. Inside, everything had. Junie leaned against him as they waited for the elevator. "Mr. Rhett, yes. If my dad ever wanted to help," she said quietly, "I think I'd let him." The doors opened. Rhett felt the words settle, not as permission, not as forgiveness, but as something fragile and precious. A beginning. The hospital room settled into a quiet rhythm after midnight. Machines hummed softly. A monitor blinked with patient persistence. Maris slept, her breathing steadier now, her face less strained than it had been hours earlier. The crisis had passed, but the weight of what nearly happened still hung in the air, like fog that refused to lift. Rhett sat in the chair beside the bed, hands folded unmoving. Junie slept across the room on a small pull-out chair. Naomi had arranged her teddy bear tucked under her chin, one sock kicked halfway off in surrender. For the first time since Rhett had met her, she looked her age, small, tired, and utterly human. He watched her for a long time. 7 years. 7 years he could never give back. Naomi returned quietly, setting down a cup of tea. "Doctors say the next 24 hours are important," she said in a low voice. "But she's responding." Rhett nodded. "Thank you for everything." Naomi studied him. "You're not doing this out of guilt alone." "No," he said honestly. "I'm doing it because it's right." When the nurse suggested Rhett get some rest, he refused. When Junie stirred slightly, he was there instantly, placing the jacket back over her shoulders without waking her. Near dawn, Maris's eyes fluttered open. She looked confused at first. Then she saw Rhett. "You didn't leave," she said hoarsely. "No," he replied. "I stayed." Her gaze shifted to Junie. Something like relief softened her expression. "Thank you," Maris whispered, not as absolution, not as forgiveness, but as recognition. Rhett nodded, understanding exactly what that word did and did not mean. Later that morning, Dr. Vargas explained the situation calmly and clearly. Infection under control. A serious heart condition requiring ongoing care, time, structure, stability. Junie listened intently, asking careful questions. "Can I see her every day?" she asked. "Yes," the doctor replied. "That's good for both of you." Junie turned to Rhett. "You'll help her, right?" Rhett met Maris's eyes before answering. "With your mom's permission, yes." Maris closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she nodded once. The decision wasn't dramatic. It was heavier than that. It was trust offered cautiously, but offered all the same. The apartment Rhett arranged was modest by his standards. 2 bedrooms, warm light, close to the hospital. No excess, no marble, no statement pieces. Just a place that felt like it could hold people, not impress them. Junie stood in the doorway, clutching Theodore. "It's quiet," she said. "That's okay," Rhett replied. "Quiet can be good." Naomi had handled everything properly: paperwork, consent, coordination with hospital social services. Nothing rushed, nothing hidden. Junie's safety came first, always. "This is your room," Rhett said, opening the smaller bedroom. Junie stepped inside slowly. A bed with soft blankets, a desk with colored pencils, a small lamp shaped like a moon. She didn't smile right away. "It's nice," she said carefully, "but it doesn't feel real." Rhett understood. "It's just for now," he said, "until your mom feels stronger." That night, Rhett cooked. Not well, but earnestly. Macaroni, steamed vegetables, sliced apples. Junie ate politely, then pushed her plate away. "Can I draw, of course?" She drew quietly while Rhett cleaned the kitchen, unsure what role he was allowed to occupy. Guardian, guest, stranger. At bedtime, Junie hesitated. "Will you leave while I'm sleeping?" she asked. The question was soft. It cut anyway. "No," Rhett said. "I'll be right outside." She nodded, accepting the answer without testing it. Later, Rhett sat alone on the couch, city lights glowing faintly through the window. He didn't open his laptop, didn't check messages, didn't think about work. He listened, the sound of a child sleeping in the next room. It felt like responsibility and purpose, and something terrifyingly close to grace. Days passed. Mornings began with hospital visits. Afternoons with school enrollment meetings arranged carefully, respectfully. Evenings with quiet dinners and gentle routines. Junie adapted faster than Rhett expected. She followed rules, She said thank you. She noticed when adults were tired. One evening, as Rhett helped her with a simple puzzle, she spoke without looking up. Mr. Rhett, yes. Why didn't my dad come? Rhett froze, then forced himself to breathe. That's a big question, he said. What do you think? Junie shrugged. Sometimes I think he didn't know about us. Sometimes I think he was busy. And sometimes… She paused. Sometimes I think it was my fault. Rhett turned fully toward her. Junie, look at me, she did. It was never your fault, he said clearly. Not once, not ever. She searched his face, then nodded slowly. Do you think he was a bad man? She asked. No, Rhett said after a beat. I think he was a man who made the wrong choices. Junie considered that. Can people fix wrong choices? Sometimes, Rhett said. If they're honest. And if they stay. She smiled faintly. I like staying. That night, Rhett watched her sleep again, struck by how easily trust could grow and how easily it could be broken. At the hospital the next day, Maris watched the two of them together. You're careful with her, she said quietly. I'm trying to be, Rhett replied. Maris nodded. She needs consistency more than anything. So do I, Rhett said, surprising himself. Maris looked at him, then not as an enemy, not as a memory, but as a man learning slowly how to carry weight that mattered. Outside the room, Junie pressed her drawing into Rhett's hand. 3 stick figures, holding hands. Us, she said simply. Rhett felt his chest tighten. Not a promise, not a miracle, just the fragile, undeniable shape of a family beginning to form. The hospital cafeteria didn't look like a place where lives changed. It smelled like coffee and disinfectant. The tables were small, the chairs were plastic. The lighting was too bright, as if the building refused to let anyone hide from reality. Maris sat across from Rhett with a paper cup of tea cradled in both hands. She looked stronger than she had a week ago, still tired, still pale, but more present, more awake. And that, in some ways, made the moment harder, because now she could choose what to say. And so could he. Down the hall, Junie was in the play corner with Naomi drawing quietly. Safe. Watched, laughing softly at something Naomi said. A child's sound light as air. Rhett kept his voice low. How are you feeling today? Maris didn't answer right away. She stared into her tea like it contained a map out of the last 7 years. Better, she said finally, and angry. Both can be true. Rhett nodded. They should be. Her gaze lifted sharp, careful. You keep saying the right things now. I'm not trying to perform, he said. I'm trying to be honest. Maris gave a faint, skeptical smile. Honest would be admitting you're here because you recognized my face in that photo. Rhett didn't flinch. Yes. And because you did the math, she continued, voice steady. You saw Junie's eyes, her age. Rhett exhaled slowly. Yes. A silence stretched between them, the kind that wasn't empty, just full. Maris's fingers tightened around the paper cup. Say it. Rhett swallowed. I think she might be mine. Maris's jaw tensed, but she didn't look surprised. She looked tired. Like she'd carried this alone for so long that even speaking it aloud felt like lifting a stone that had become part of her spine. She is, Maris said. The words landed without drama, without flourish. That was what made them devastating. Rhett's vision blurred for a second, not from tears, yet more like his body needed time to catch up to the truth his mind had been circling for days. I didn't know, he said hoarsely. I know you didn't, Maris replied. And that was the cruelest kindness of all, because it removed his one flimsy excuse and replaced it with something worse. It wasn't villainy. It was absence. Maris continued, voice controlled, but threaded with something that trembled at the edges. When I found out I was pregnant, you were already gone. China. Meetings, big announcements. Your office was a wall. I left messages. She stopped swallowing. I learned fast that begging for space in your life was humiliating. Rhett's hands clenched under the table. I never wanted you to beg. But you let it happen, Maris said quietly. You let me become optional. Rhett looked down as if the table could offer forgiveness. You were never optional. Maris's eyes shone, but she did not cry. She had cried enough for a lifetime when no one was watching. I didn't come back to tell you later, she said, because the man I knew back then wouldn't have chosen us. Not truly. Maybe you would have paid. Maybe you would have visited. But would you have stayed? Rhett opened his mouth, then closed it. Honesty demanded a brutal answer. I don't know, he admitted. And I hate that I don't know. Maris nodded once. That's why I protected her from that kind of half-love. She deserved certainty. Rhett's throat tightened. Does she know? No, Maris said. She knows she has questions. She knows I don't talk about him. That's all. Rhett glanced down the hall at Junie's small shoulders, hunched over her drawing with absolute concentration. The idea of her building fantasies around a blank space made his chest ache. Maris softened just a fraction. She likes you, she said. And that scares me. It scares me too, Rhett confessed. Because if I fail her, Maris cut in calm but steel-lined. Then don't. Don't talk about redemption. Do the unglamorous part. Be consistent. Be boring. Be there. Rhett nodded slowly. I can do that. Maris studied him for a long moment. One day at a time, she said. One day at a time, Rhett echoed. Down the hall, Junie suddenly looked up, as if she could feel something shifting in the air. Her eyes met Rhett's through the glass divider. She smiled. It was small. It was pure. It was a gift he had not earned. And Rhett realized the next part of his life would be built on one terrifying rule: you don't deserve second chances. You prove them. That evening, Junie asked for hot chocolate. Not because she was hungry, not because she wanted sugar, but because hot chocolate meant something. It meant night. Safety. A small ritual that said today is over and you made it through. Rhett warmed milk on the stove the way Maris had shown him earlier that week. Slow, careful, no rushing. He stirred in cocoa a touch of honey and watched Junie sit at the kitchen table with Theodore propped beside her like an honored guest. She drew while she waited, tongue peeking out in concentration. Rhett set the mug down in front of her. Careful. It's warm. Junie nodded seriously, then took a tiny sip like a professional taste tester. Perfect, she declared. Rhett smiled. Your mom taught me. Junie's eyes brightened at the mention of Maris, then dimmed again like a candle flickering under a draft. She tapped her pencil twice, thinking. Rhett, she asked. He paused. He'd told her she could call him Rhett if she wanted. She'd tried it once, then stopped like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be that close. Yeah, Junebug. She blinked at the nickname. Junebug, it just fits, he said softly. If you don't like it, I won't use it. Junie's mouth twitched into the smallest smile. It's okay. It's kinda nice. Rhett's chest warmed in a place Coco couldn't reach. Junie looked down at her drawing again. Can I ask you something weird? You can ask me anything? Rhett said, then felt the weight of those words immediately. Junie hesitated, then spoke quickly, as if bravery had a limited timer. Do you think my dad is dead? The question stole all the air from the room. Rhett set the spoon down carefully, so his hands wouldn't shake. Why do you think that? Junie shrugged, but her shoulders were tight. Because if he wasn't, why wouldn't he look for us? She stared into her cocoa as if it might answer. Sometimes I think maybe he didn't care. Rhett's throat burned. He wanted to blurt out the truth, to fix it with one sentence, to say I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm yours. But it wasn't his moment alone. It was Maris's moment too. Junie's. The timing mattered. The way it was said mattered. So he chose the safest honesty he could give a child. without dropping a grenade into her heart. "I don't think he was dead," Rhett said gently. "I think sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that don't make sense to kids, or even to themselves later." Junie's eyes lifted, searching his face like she was reading a story in it. "Was it a big mistake?" Rhett nodded once. "Yes." Junie traced a line on her paper. "I made up stories," she admitted. Rhett leaned forward slightly. "What kind of stories?" Junie's cheeks pinked. "Sometimes he's an astronaut," she said, almost whispering, like he had to go away on an important mission, or an explorer. Or sometimes he's just far away, and he's trying to come home, but the roads are confusing. Rhett felt a sharp sting behind his eyes. He kept his voice steady. "Those are really good stories." Junie looked at Theodore, then back at Rhett. "Sometimes," she said, quieter, "I imagine he's like you." Rhett froze. Junie rushed on, embarrassed. "Not like rich or anything. Just like you're nice. And you stay. And you don't get mad when I ask questions." Rhett's heart clenched so hard it almost hurt. He reached out slowly and tucked one of her curls behind her ear, a gentle, careful gesture asking permission with his pace. Junie didn't pull away. "That's a beautiful thing to imagine," he said softly. "And I think, whoever your dad is, if he knew you the way I do now, he would be proud of you." Junie blinked fast, as if tears were inconvenient. "Really, really," Rhett said. She stared at him, then nodded as if locking something away for later. "Okay." A quiet fell over the kitchen. Then Junie slid her drawing across the table. 3 stick figures. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small, all holding hands. A heart above them. "It's a wish," she explained quickly, as if she needed to defend it. "Not real. Just a wish." Rhett placed his hand on the paper like it was fragile glass. "Wishes can be important," he said. Junie watched him carefully. "Do you have wishes?" Rhett swallowed. "Yeah," he admitted. "I do." Junie sipped her cocoa again, calmer now. "Then maybe," she said very softly, "our wishes can be friends." Rhett's eyes burned. He looked away just long enough to breathe. Because if a child's wish could befriend his, then the next step, telling her the truth, had to be done with care so gentle it didn't bruise the hope she'd built. A week later, Maris was discharged. Not healthy, not fine, but stable enough to heal outside the ICU under strict follow-up and proper care. The doctors were clear: medication schedules, rest appointments, and no pretending everything was normal just because she was home. Rhett insisted on an apartment near the hospital, comfortable, bright, practical. Morris agreed only after Dr. Vargas confirmed it was medically sensible, and Naomi handled the lease in a way that didn't trap Maris into anything permanent. "It's temporary," Maris said on the first day, standing in the living room like she was measuring the air for hidden strings. "Temporary," Rhett agreed. "You're in control." Junie ran from room to room, Theodore under her arm, amazed at the simple luxury of space. Not riches, not glamour, just breathing room. That evening they attempted dinner together. It should have been warm. It should have been healing. Instead, it started awkward, like 3 people trying to dance to the same song while hearing different music. Junie talked about school and the ladybug she'd named Captain Sprinkle. She giggled at her own joke. She tried to make Maris smile, and Maris did small, tired smiles that still meant everything. Rhett listened more than he spoke. He watched Maris carefully, how she took smaller bites, how she paused to breathe, how her hand sometimes pressed lightly against her chest when she thought no one noticed. After dinner, Junie brought out crayons. "Family art time," she announced with authority. Maris raised an eyebrow. "Is that a real thing now?" Junie nodded. "Yes, it's a rule." Rhett pretended to be offended. "No one told me there were rules. You're learning." Junie said seriously, then burst into laughter at her own grown-up tone. Maris's mouth twitched into something almost like amusement. They drew in silence for a while. Then Maris spoke without looking up. She's getting attached. Rhett's pencil stopped. Junie didn't hear. She was too focused on coloring Theodore's bow tie purple. Rhett kept his voice low. I know. Maris finally looked up, eyes sharp with fear she tried to disguise as anger. I won't watch her get hurt by hope. Rhett nodded. You shouldn't. Maris's hand tightened around the crayon. You can't just be here for the exciting part, the dramatic part, the part where you feel like a hero. I don't want to be her hero, Rhett said quietly. I want to be steady. Maris stared at him as if testing the word for truth. You're good at intensity, she said. You're good at grand decisions. But can you handle ordinary? Rhett exhaled. I can learn, if you let me. Maris's eyes shimmered, not tears, not softness, just the edge of something real. One day at a time, she said again, like a boundary and a prayer. Rhett nodded. One day at a time. Junie looked up, suddenly sensing the seriousness. Are we doing the quiet faces thing? Maris blinked, caught. The what? Junie made a dramatic expression, lips pressed tight, eyes wide. When adults talk with their eyes and forget kids can feel it. Rhett almost laughed. Maris's shoulders loosened slightly. No, Maris said gently. We're not doing that. We're just making plans. Junie nodded as if that made perfect sense. Then she held up her drawing. It was a stone tower sketched in crayons. Big rock at the bottom, medium in the middle, small on top. This is us, Junie declared. But like, careful. Rhett felt something twist in his chest. Maris stared at the drawing for a long moment. Then slowly she reached for Rhett's hand, not to forgive him, not to erase the past, just to acknowledge the present. Her fingers touched his brief, cautious reel. Rhett didn't squeeze too hard, didn't cling. He simply stayed still, letting the moment exist without grabbing at it, because that was the new rule. No rushing, no forcing, no speeches, just a family learning the shape of itself one day at a time. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. No hospital alarms, no urgent calls, just sunlight spilling across the living room floor while Junie colored quietly at the coffee table. Maris rested on the couch, eyes closed, breathing slow and careful. Rhett sat nearby, reading reports he barely registered. Junie looked up suddenly. Rhett, yes, Junebug. She hesitated. This time she didn't rush the question. She studied his face like she was checking the weather. Do you think my dad would like me? The real me, she asked. Rhett set everything aside. What do you mean, he asked gently. Junie shrugged. Not the me who's brave, or polite, or helpful, just me. When I get scared, or tired, or annoying. Rhett felt the weight of it. Children didn't ask questions like that unless they'd carried doubt for too long. I think he said slowly, any dad who really sees you would like you more when you're just being you. Junie considered this. Even when I cry. Especially then, Rhett replied. She nodded, absorbing the answer, then returned to her drawing. A moment later, she slid the paper toward him. It was a house. Small. 3 windows lit. 3 figures inside. This one's different, she said. This one isn't a wish. Rhett's throat tightened. What is it then? It's what I think might happen, Junie said softly. If everyone stays honest. From the couch, Maris watched silently. For the first time, she didn't step in, didn't interrupt, didn't protect Junie from hope. She simply watched the trust forming and allowed it to exist. Later that night, after Junie fell asleep, Maris stood by the window. The city lights shimmered below, distant and indifferent. Rhett stayed near the doorway, careful not to crowd her. She asked again, didn't she? Maris said quietly. Rhett nodded. Yes. Maris closed her eyes. I knew she would. Silence stretched. Not tense, just heavy. I never wanted to lie to her. Maris continued. I just didn't want to break her with the truth before she was ready. I understand, Rhett said. Maris turned to face him. Do you? Rhett met her gaze. I think I'm starting to. Maris inhaled slowly. She's building something in her head. A picture of a father. If we tell her, it has to be solid. Not a maybe, Rhett nodded. Then we wait. Until you say it's time. Maris studied him, searching for impatience. Finding none. You're different, she said. Not accusing, observing. I'm trying to be consistent, Rhett replied. Even when it's quiet. Maris looked toward Junie's closed bedroom door. She's stronger than she knows. So are you, Rhett said. Maris's voice softened. Tomorrow, she said. We'll go to the park. Just us. No doctors, no schedules. Rhett smiled faintly. I'd like that. Maris nodded once. Me too. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, a truth waited carefully, patiently, ready to be spoken at the right moment. The park smelled like leaves and clean air. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through bare branches, painting soft gold lines across the path. Junie ran ahead. Theodore tucked under one arm, stopping every few steps to examine something important. A smooth stone, a stubborn squirrel, a fallen leaf shaped like a heart. Maris walked slowly, careful with her breath. Rhett matched her pace without comment. No one rushed. No one led. It felt intentional, like the day itself had agreed to wait. They reached a quiet patch of grass. Rhett spread the blanket. Junie sat cross-legged, already arranging stones into a careful tower. Bottom one is strong, she announced. Middle one keeps things together. Top one is small but important. Maris watched, then took a breath she'd been practicing for days. Junie, she said softly. Junie looked up, instantly attentive. Yeah, Mom? Maris knelt so they were eye to eye. Her voice didn't tremble, but it wasn't hard either. It was steady like a bridge. There's something I want to tell you, she said, and you can take all the time you need. Junie nodded. Okay. Maris glanced at Rhett once, not for permission, but for presence. He nodded back. Here. Still. Your dad didn't disappear because of you. Maris continued. He didn't know about us, and when he finally found us, he stayed. Junie's eyes moved slowly to Rhett, not shocked, curious. Maris placed a gentle hand over Junie's. Rhett is your father. The world didn't shatter. It went quiet. Junie blinked. Once. Twice. Like, really, she asked. Rhett lowered himself to her level. Yes, he said. And I'm sorry it took so long to say it the right way. Junie searched his face, then Maris's. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She thought. Does that mean, she asked carefully, you're not going away? Rhett answered without drama. It means I'm here, and I will keep being here. Junie considered that promise the way she considered everything seriously. Then she reached out and took his hand. Not tight, not desperate. Just enough. Okay, she said. Then you can help hold the tower. They added one last stone together. It wobbled, then steadied. Maris exhaled a sound she hadn't known she'd been holding back for years. They sat there as the sun dipped lower, 3 shadows stretching across the grass, imperfect and real. Rhett didn't feel redeemed. He felt responsible in the best way. Junie leaned against him, warm and solid. Maris rested back on her hands, watching her child breathe easily. No speeches, no miracles, just a family choosing truth, choosing patience, choosing tomorrow. One day at a time. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.